So, hello and welcome to Debra and Peter are doing a podcast to our lovely listeners with me, Deborah Alcott-Tyler, and my beloved twinny, Peter Wanless. I must tell you, Peter, I had a LinkedIn message today from a listener who messaged to ask to connect and messaged to say, please, will you connect with me? I'm a small charity struggling, but I listened to your podcast and it seems to me it'd be very useful to know you, which I thought was like, that's great, isn't it?
Oh, we must be into double figures.
We must be into double figures, certainly loads of downloads, but it's always lovely, that little moment. I was able to message her back and say, we're all struggling, babe, don't worry. Size has got nothing to do with it. Everybody is trying to keep their head above water.
Yes.
The job is hard. So listen, I'm super excited about the whole adventure with the cats, Peter, because last time we spoke, they were still trapped indoors, prowling and looking longingly outside.
Yeah, so this is one of those moments, isn't it? When do you let go? And I can theorize about the cats being free spirits and they need to come and go as they please. And there's lots of lovely things for them in the house. At the same time, there's so many exciting things outside and they're such different characters. They have each been out on their own with someone tracking them, almost always Becky, around the sort of garden, and they show off their different characters incredibly. So, one of them is very, very cautious and sniffs all the way around just the closest bit of garden. But Hetti, who is a real free spirit, went anywhere and everywhere and through hedge holes and all the rest of it and gone for a while and all of that. So she's the one we were most worried about. Anyway, this morning, I'm just wandering downstairs. It's pouring with rain outside. And I said to Becky, oh, look, there's a cat out there. It looks a little bit like one of ours. Oh, it is one of ours.
Oh, no.
How can that be? How can it possibly be? So I opened the door and sure enough, it's Hetti. And she's looking at me a bit sort of scared. Come on, Hetti, come in. And she sort of looks around and then she shot into the house. So that was good because when she's out, she doesn't really want to come back. Well, anyway, it turns out that there was an upstairs bathroom window that had just been opened a tiny amount and somehow she'd managed to lift the latch up.
And get out.
And the window hadn't shut insufficiently for her to get out. She must have got out onto a roof. Who knows how long she'd been outside, but there you go. She'd found her way back, and so what are we worrying about? And in some ways we didn't worry all that time that she was out, but we've no idea how long she was out or where she'd been, and so maybe the moment has come to release our babies into the wild and see what happens. So is the cat
flap not working yet then?
The cat flap isn't yet installed because it's sort of glass at the back of the house. We've had to have a new pane of glass and they're currently fitting a cat flap into the glass, and then you have to register the chips with the cat flap and all of that, and then at that moment, which will probably be the next time we do a podcast, I think they probably will be coming and going, but there we are. Hetti is out and about.
She must have been absolutely traumatized, wondering, what the hell, have I been abandoned? Why have they locked me out of my house?
But super excited. Maybe, it's taken that kind of bug out of her a little bit and changed the balance of power between us. She'll
probably end up being agoraphobic now.
Because the other thing about her is that she's been a silent cat for 7 years, and the only time we've ever heard her make these tiny little squeaks are when she's being naughty, walking along the top of the curtain rail or climbing on the top of a cupboard. But since she has been out, all she does is sing with these little squeaks, at different windows. So she's clearly ready to go and has taken her destiny into her own hands by finding this secret window and managing to open it. I mean, pretty smart,
it's a bit
really.
like that at work, though, isn't it? It makes me think of, when do you, especially with new people or people who've been promoted or people who are learning a new skill, at what point do you send them out into the wild and hope they find their way back safely? And, how much of an eye, how much do you keep on? Like getting that balance right as a leader between giving support versus micromanaging or abandoning. There's kind of a thing between abandonment and micromanagement, which is a little bit of both. And I must admit, I found it easier as years have gone on, because I've realised that actually people do manage and they do survive and they do float. But I think it is quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah, in a work context, people have constantly positively surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
Delighted me in their ability to take things on for themselves. And I think in charities, this is one of the huge benefits about working for a charity relative to bureaucracies and big businesses with corporate procedures and all that kind of stuff. You do have the opportunity to take on extraordinary responsibility at a young age and at what would be seen to be a kind of junior role in many other places. So I can understand that better in the work context than I can with our little cat babies.
Yeah, it's true.
Who aren't really babies at all. They're
No.
7 years and 8 years old. So
I know, but they're always our babies, Peter, aren't they? But it makes me think about, actually, I did a podcast for our Women in Leadership conference with a colleague, talking about, experience of leadership over time. And one of the things I talked about was that I've learned over the years that you don't really want to recruit really experienced people especially into very senior roles, because my experience has been is they don't stay that long because it's nothing new to them. So I've tended now to look for potential, someone who can just absolutely got the potential, who'll be excited and come with fresh ideas and, isn't like an old hand and things like that, which interesting. We're doing this podcast because, Peter, we at DSC are celebrating over the next 6 months 50 years since Michael Norton, our founder, wrote his first book. So we're not having any dues or anything because, well, we haven't got the cash. But what we have done is Gabby, our marketing editor, or I never remember anybody's job titles. Anyway, the super duper skilled person in marketing has organised a campaign of over 6 months highlighting, what's changed in the sector over
50 years. Wow.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it? Not as long as the NSPCC, of course, because you were 100, weren't you, last year?
So NSPCC was founded in 1884, but I've been obsessing about Somerset crickets. It's been our 150th, hasn't it? So so 3 times the age of the DSC. Yeah, in fact, this is a funny thing. I've got this wonderful Somerset book written by Vic Marks, the old Somerset England player, and I thought this was amusing. So when Somerset was established in 1875, they passed 4 resolutions. Number 1, there shall be no county ground. Well, there is a county ground now in Taunton. That's one of the main reasons I've moved to Taunton. So that fail. Number 2, the club shall depend on support by voluntary contributions. Oh, if only we now utterly depend on handouts, not utterly, but largely handouts from the ECB and the TV rights. So number 2, fail. Number 3, county matches shall be played on any ground in the county that may be selected by the committee. Well, that is true, except we play just about every game at Taunton. and number 4, a president, vice president, treasurer and secretary by nomination, and a committee of 9 gentlemen, 3 from each division of the county, shall be appointed. So not a single one of the founding rules of 1875 now exists. So have a look back and see what the founding rules of the DSC were 50 years ago. And if you managed to, whereas NSPCC has stuck to the same purpose since 1884.
Well, and I would say so is DSC. So Michael Norton's original vision was about information and support to help human beings, actually, to help people, and then it became about charities specifically to do their work. And that's still what we, that vision is still core to the work that we do. We still exist to help charities become informed and strong and effective so that they can serve their community or their cause, whatever it is. So I think I could justifiably say we haven't lost sight of the original vision. Having said that, though, sometimes I think you have to. So I think about In Kind Direct, which is the wonderful charity that I'm on the board of. And what In Kind Direct does is it redistributes surplus product from companies to charities. So everything from fairy liquid to toilet paper to shampoos to toothpaste to period products, you name it, that sort of thing, and other things besides. But what's really interesting, it was set up by Prince Charles coming up 30 years ago, because he wanted to do something about the environment, because he found out that companies were basically dumping a load of product in landfill that they couldn't sell. And sometimes it was perfect, often, nearly all the time, it was perfectly usable product. It was like a bottle of fairy liquid that just had a misprint on the label. And so they couldn't sell it because of the misprint, and it would have cost more to do all the labels. It was cheaper to just, do a new batch and dump it. So it was environmental at the beginning. But now, of course, all these years later, what's interesting about it is that original cause, the environmental one, isn't quite as pressing, because companies now have got a lot better at supply management, at waste management. There's a considerably less product that goes to landfill now. So now that's still what we rely on, those products, but now the products are more often donated as opposed to rescued, if that makes any sense. And and proactively donated by organisations like Procter and Gamble and Amazon and Unilever and things like that. And but now, of course, we're having the conversation about what is. So if the environmental pressure isn't there in quite the same way, it's still there, but not to the same degree as it was nearly 30 years ago. What is our priority? And so we're talking about poverty. Like, the reason we exist is, of course, about the environment, but actually what we're helping out with is poverty. And then questions about, are we just supplying product to help, or do we have a bigger role to play in trying to tackle the causes of poverty? So it's a great, fun charity to be involved in. But it just made me think of, many of us do have to evolve, and it's really okay if we change from our, because the environment changes, doesn't it? I mean, we don't have batsmen anymore, do we? We have batters. Although I do remember a very funny conversation with one of my dad's mates, who was like in outrage about, it's ridiculous. Why should we they've always been called batsmen. And I was like, well, we don't call them bowlermen. We don't call them fieldermen. We don't call them wicket men, do we? We call them wicket keepers. So what's the problem? You're just taking the man off one job. Well, apart from third man. They still call it third man, don't they? But
third. No, there are quite a few people now call it
just
third.
Call it third. Yeah. So people know where it is.
Oh, well, I mean, there are all sorts of things. There used to be a spin bowl delivery called Chinaman, and you're not allowed to call, and that is wrong on so many levels now.
Yes, so many levels.
Now it's called a left arm leg break or something. I don't know, but there we go. So change with the times. Although you can confuse people as well, can't you? I see that the 5 missions moved, then become 6 milestones, and now apparently the mission delivery unit has gone, and it's going to be 3 priorities. And there's something about constancy which helps with communications. But I had something that I wanted to discuss with you, and it comes out of cricket, but it's not really about cricket. So in an interview with The Times, the England one-day cricket captain, Harry Brook, so he's a new captain for this format, says that he will not be having any team meetings to bring the team together. I wonder if he'll feel the same way after today's game, in which they've had an absolute shellacking from South Africa. But what Harry Brook says is, I'll never have a meeting. They are the most overrated things ever. I think having meetings can overcomplicate things. A meeting is a waste of an hour. I'm not very good at sitting there and listening. Individual chats here and there mean more. So what do you think about that? Can you imagine a world without meetings? It sounds liberating on the face of it.
Well, it's a funny thing about meetings. It's like, because I hear this often, people complain about meetings. You often hear there are too many bloody meetings. We just need to get on with the work. But when you get to senior level, Peter, the meetings are the work. There's no way. You can't motivate your staff through an email. You can't evidence listening through an email. You can't get a group collective sense of powerful togetherness on a one-to-one basis. I mean, the people misunderstand that the purpose of a meeting is not always the obvious surface purpose. We're meeting to discuss the budget. Actually, it's also about where you get to hear your colleagues' worries and concerns. You get to hear other questions that you may not have thought of. You get to hear other kind of input. You get to get praised and rewarded. You get to, understand what other people's challenges are. I mean, you can't possibly operate effectively without meeting with people, I don't think.
But Harry says he's not very good at sitting there and listening.
Well, you shouldn't bloody be the captain then. How can you possibly offer to be in a leadership position and say you're not going to listen? And not only that, you will know this, Peter, but often we as leaders have to listen and do what they want, not what we want. Because sometimes you've got to say, okay, we'll go with what you believe, even though I believe something different. So not only have you got to listen, you've also sometimes got to let other people's judgments, override yours. I mean, obviously that doesn't happen all the time. If it's something business critical, you might not do that. But generally speaking, that's what I think. I think, oh dear. But anyway, if today's performance is anything to go by, maybe he needs to have a good thing. Oh, because the other thing he said, wasn't it? It's like odd hack ad hoc individual chats or something, was it?
Individual chats here and there mean more.
Yeah, except no, they don't. They really don't, because the trouble is, individual chats tend to happen when you've got something negative to say. It's not very often that you say, Peter, can you meet with me at 9 o'clock on Monday? And then on the Monday say, I just want to tell you you're doing a really good job. That's very rarely. We know that. So what will happen is he'll only have those chats with people when he thinks they need cheering up or improving or criticising. Whereas when you have regular scheduled one-to-ones, people don't associate it with I'm going to get into trouble. And also when it's ad hoc, who are the people he's missing? And finally, you can't create a team through one-to-one individual interactions. You're not the centre of the team as the leader. The team is the team. The team need to hear each other and have the opportunity to celebrate successes with each other, or to say, you had a really tough time out there today, didn't you, mate? Let's have a chat about it, or don't worry, or whatever. So for the team to give each other support and love. The man's an idiot.
It's such a strange thing to say.
It is.
For a team sport, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that in a team, people should know and understand their role and the distinct role that they play, but they need to know and appreciate and understand the distinct roles that others play around them. And I also am pretty confident that when they went out onto the pitch, they all probably got into a little huddle and they said something to one another. So the other thing about his thing is a meeting is a waste of an hour. So there's this sort of assumption, if you're going to have a meeting, it's got to be an hour. And that is a frustration. And I do, and I can sympathise with people who fill their diaries up with meetings that last an hour and they're really badly chaired and purposeless. And so that could be a problem. Perhaps he and the team need to learn the art of the 10-minute check-in or something.
Yeah. Well, actually, we do that at DSC. So I meet with my directors team twice a week, on a Tuesday morning and a Thursday morning. And then once a month, we have a bigger session together, a more strategic one. And we put aside an hour in the diary. But this morning, we met for 10 minutes. Because there wasn't, so it's just everybody okay, anything bothering anybody, anything coming up, anything we need to be aware of. And everybody's like, no, everything's fine, we're just cracking on. So, okay, we won't take any more time, we'll see you Thursday. So I think there's creating the space for meetings is good, but you don't have to fill it. If there isn't much to talk about, you can just say, give people the free time.
You didn't have anyone pitching up and saying, do you know what, this is really complicating things, and I haven't got the time to listen to the rest of you because I need to go on and do whatever it is I need to do. Be out first of all.
Sometimes that does happen. Sometimes somebody will say, I've really, really got this really important proposal to get out, or what have you, and we'll say, okay, either you carry on and we'll carry on without you and let you know what we talked about, or we'll, So I think you've got to have some flexibility in it. It's about, and because also with our leadership team meetings as well. So I don't chair them now, or very rarely. I occasionally chair them, but now my directors team take turns in chairing the meeting. So they've got the experience of how do you manage this big. Well, it's not that big. We've got about 12, I think, or 13. But how do you manage this group of people through a conversation and an agenda to get to results? So it's really good for them, and it's also great for the team because they don't have to listen to me.
Have you ever done the Edward de Bono's 6 Hats?
Yes. Yeah.
That's quite fun, isn't it? I mean, you do need a bit of time. I don't think Harry Brook would have the patience to go through all of that. But we did that with Michael Bishard when he was the permanent secretary at Department for Education, and he was concerned that people were insufficiently creative and too quick to see the negative, and it was intriguing and quite energizing, actually, particularly to create specific moments when people had to put on the hat that required them to be creative and to build positively on what we'd already got, rather than work out how to knock things down, which there was a lot more skill at doing around the table.
Well, we do 2 things quite a bit. The first one is we do a lot of plus delta, appreciative inquiry. So often we'll, there's a quarter, for example, we might say, right, let's talk about last quarter. What was good about it? What was really effective? What were the things we should do differently, or we could think about doing differently? And that's quite helpful. But the other thing we do is we sort of have this rule, which it's not hard and fast, it's not written down, but this kind of culture of how could we make this happen instead of what are all the reasons why? And so when you do when the approach is how could we? So how could we? I don't know, get 500 people on the Women in Leadership Conference. then what would it take to do that? Well, it would take, we'd need another £20,000 worth of marketing spend. Can we get £20,000 worth of marketing spend? No. Okay. If not that, then what could we do? So so you start from trying to do the positive stuff, and then whereas I think, I don't know about you, but I think this is true for lots of chief executives. One of the things that drives you mad the most is when people only tell you what the problems are or why a thing can't be done, and they don't start from how could we do it, But I think broadly at DSC we're pretty good at doing that. Saying how we could do it.
I love that, and I've used that before, sort of future focus, where you stand at the solution and then work back. And another one which I've done before, which is quite fun, is that you say, how would, and then you pick someone. I wouldn't pick Harry Brook, I don't think, at the moment. How would the England cricket captain solve? But you might. There's been a lot of talk about Bazball, you might, or pick how would the Gallagher brothers solve this problem? And it's quite fun. It just, if it's a not particularly interesting subject, it sometimes unlocks interesting perspectives and a different way of approaching an issue.
I'm writing that down because I think that's a brilliant idea. How would they increase
Nelson Mandela solve this problem? Whatever.
Well, we also do what if. So we and actually we've implemented some of that. So we've got some changes to some of our strategies this year, because last year we asked the question, what if we didn't do this? What if we did that instead of that? And we looked at it with some of our sacred cows and said, what if we didn't produce this particular sacred cow? What might it look like? And what was really interesting was we actually killed off some of our sacred cows by asking that question, because suddenly somebody went away and did the numbers, and they came back with the numbers. It's like, bloody hell, if we kill that cow, we're going to make thousands of pounds. If we keep the cow alive, we're scrabbling by. So we do play the what if game as well. And also things, if you what if it, people don't feel quite as threatened.
No,
it does, and especially you have to do it across the piece. You can't pick one department and say, "What if we didn't have a fundraising team anymore?" Because that just pisses people off. But you have to say, "What if we had a different approach to fundraising?" Or "What if we got everything from major donors?" Or "What if we got everything from the government? What would it look like? What would happen?" They're great conversations because they do stretch people's thinking quite a lot, don't they?
They do. And then a final one. I think we've talked about this one before. I think you maybe do this, where you have the sort of the two corners, a red corner and a blue corner, or red corner and a yellow corner, and you test something completely to destruction. So you say, what are all the things which could possibly go wrong if we decide to freeze everyone's pay this year? What's the best case we could possibly make for that? And that's useful if you're thinking that you're going to have to do something which is going to be uncomfortable. Then trying to uncover every possible line of attack. It may make you change your mind, or it may at least mean that you're prepared for what's going to be the
reactions. Yeah. We don't do it quite like that, but it's not dissimilar when we do our budgets, which we're coming into this year. So, which people always fear and dread, understandably, actually, because especially when you've had difficult years as we have, how the hell do you build a budget for next year? When you've been hanging on by the skin of your teeth and crossing your fingers and your legs and your toes and your eyes at every point. Yeah, it's funny, but we're all through that. I mean, coming back to that, my new connection on LinkedIn, a small charity. I don't know if you saw, but David Brindle, who I adore, so he was the Guardian editor, Society editor.
Society Guardian.
He was absolutely ages. Yeah. He's really passionate about social care and very good on the topic, actually. But he posted a thing on LinkedIn about that age-old perennial thing. There are and in fact, he even said there are too many charities, and I'm prepared to die on that hill. And anyway, of course, that pressed a lot of buttons, and obviously mine. So we had the conversation. But it's a funny thing, isn't it? People have such a different. And it's really hard to get to grips with, because you sort of, people say there's too many charities. Then when you ask the question, well, how many is the right number? And how do you judge? On what basis do you judge it? Do you say you can only have one children's charity and one animal welfare charity and one life-saving at sea charity and one cancer charity? Is that how you decide it? And if it isn't that, because that's obviously ridiculous, then where do you put the limit? And also this business of this kind of assumption that donors and volunteers and beneficiaries don't deserve choice. Because the word they use a lot in relation to our sector, Peter, is duplication. But
Yes.
they don't use that about the private sector. You don't say that Jones, the bootmaker, is a duplication of June, who make and sell shoes, do you? You don't say they're a duplication. You talk about them as being different, different types of shop with different atmospheres and all the rest of it. So it's one of the things that I've always kind of struggled with. Although I'm brutal about it, when anyone in the sector says that to me, I think there are too many charities. I say, well, close yours then.
Yeah.
And that's one less, and of course it's never theirs that's too many of. It's none of the ones that they're a trustee or they're running or working for. It's all the other buggers who are the problem. Anyway, I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I especially loved in Big Lottery Fund days, I especially loved the fact that the lottery supported so many tiny organisations to get their first ever grant. And for sure, the idea that if you're desperately passionate about something and you want to make a small difference in your area, you're only allowed to do that if you are if you hand it over to some great big faceless organization. I mean, that's crazy. So there's got to be space for a proliferation of people to follow their passions, and then and not assume that all of them want to grow to become national and international presence on their issue.
Most don't, in fairness.
So that to me is definitely a strength of the sector, and we should encourage and support it. I was quite shocked the other day when we were just at the Five Rights Foundation. We were just reflecting on who we were and what made us special, and someone had circulated a list of 500 charities that were already active in the online safety space for children. Lots of them are branches of Save the Children and UNICEF, and a lot of them are to do with kind of images online. But nevertheless, I did feel, gosh, already 500. Do we really need 500? And you can't help thinking we've been at this for a while and we know what we're doing. And it's all very well having entrance to the market, but if people are trying to do the same thing but not quite as well, which is probably an arrogant way of me thinking about the problem, but there are.
Well, we always think our charities do it better, always. Nobody's ever going to say, actually, they do it better than we do, so let's not do it. That's the reality.
Yeah.
We always think that. So there's no shame in you saying that, Peter. I would say that about DSC, and other people might say, we don't do it as well. But the point about it is there's a natural market in the sector, which is why the register is relatively stable. Because if you can't attract donors, if you can't attract volunteers, and if you can't attract beneficiaries, you don't survive. So, so charities also die every year, because they weren't able to get the energy or the input or the money or whatever to keep going. So I think people also forget that there is a natural, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, natural market for the volunteer sector.
Or they stay dormant and they just do something once a year that makes that makes a difference. It's much harder to get a grant for £30,000 or £50,000 than it is to get one for 5,000.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of that, and of course, loads of charities only want to work in their particular area, only want to work on their particular issue. So of those 500 charities you mentioned, I suspect some of them are absolutely tiny and working on one issue, and it's do you know what I mean? So but better to have that than to only have one great monolithic charity. I mean, I said to David, the trouble is, if you just limit it to a few very large charities, you end up with, unaccountable monolithic institutions like water companies, where there's no accountability, no consequences, no choice. I don't have a choice who supplies my water. Unfortunately, mine is Thames Water, so it's not great. But, I don't have any choice about that. And I would not want that to creep into our sector, that, if you want to support children, you can only go to the NSPCC, because that doesn't seem right to me. And in fact, you've said yourself, Peter, the NSPCC actually operates differently to Bernardo's, to Save the Children, to the Children's Society, to, you've all got your distinct places, even if there's overlap.
Ethos.
Yeah.
Harry Brook should probably go and play for a very small cricket team, because they won't need to have very many meetings. If you're just following your passion and you're a single issue in a local area, you probably don't need too many meetings. Where at Thames Water, I bet they have hundreds and hundreds of meetings. He would hate it there, wouldn't he?
He would.
Andy would be wasted, because he's an extremely talented batter.
Oh, he is, and he's a joy to watch, actually, Harry Brooks. But if by some extreme chance he's ever listening to this, I'd encourage him to have perhaps a post-match debrief today meeting with the team,
Yeah.
and just like spend an hour talking through what you could do differently, what you've learned, what you could do better the next time you play, because you're not going to do that on a one-on-one basis. What's he going to do? Spend the next 10 hours, because he's one of them, speaking to 10 individual cricketers by themselves between now and, I think Thursday's the next match, isn't it?
That's right. They're at Lords on Thursday, so they can go again there.
Well,
and we shall see.
We shall see. Meetings are the answer, Harry. You need more bloody meetings, then you might win. Anyway, I think we've run out of time.
On that note,
yes.
Yeah, I think we better let people go. It's great to see you. By next time we speak, I think the cats will be outside, but hopefully still returning.
Well, if you can get a pic of them in the garden, at least, Peter, that would be a joyful thing for our listeners.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay. Thanks a lot, listeners.
Great to see you. Cheers.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.